Hey loves, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, I'm Rai and this is Rai's Reading Corner. And today I'm going to be sharing with you some of my favorite whimsical fantasy books. Again, hello, I'm Rai and this is Rai's Reading Corner. If this is the first time you are seeing my face or if you have not yet hit the subscribe button, please do so. It's super easy and it really helps my channel grow. So first things first, yes, my background is super different right now. Currently, when I'm filming this, I am quarantined in isolation to the basement. I have had two super direct exposures to COVID. So for my family safety, I am staying isolated in our basement. So here we are. I have this bookshelf in my basement, necessarily usually books on it, but I do have books down here right now that I just have down here for myself to pick from to read. So we're gonna make do. So I do apologize that this setting is not as nice as my rainbow bookshelves, but hopefully you don't mind because I still want to make content for you and this is the perfect time because I can't go anywhere. So as you can tell by my thumbnail and from my little introduction, today I'm gonna be sharing with you some of my favorite whimsical fantasy books. So if you have not heard about one of the big readathons that is going on in April is Realmathon, which is hosted by my girl Cassidy from over at Covers with Cassidy. This is a readathon that she has created and it is absolutely amazing. It is based around this fantastical world with 4 realms. Now, just because it is based off a fantastical world that she has created does not mean you have to read fantastical books. You can literally read whatever. The prompts are super vague, which is absolutely amazing for all of our readers who like different genres. So I have the honor to be one of the co-rulers for one of the realms, and I am the co-ruler for Serene, which is the water-based realm, and I'm very honored to be the co-ruler with Maddie from Book Browsing Blog. Also, go check out her channel down below. Also, I will post Cassidy's video announcement for this because I'm not going to go into all the details for that because I will not do it as well as she did, but I am here to give you whimsical book recs. So each of our 4 realms have a different subgenre that you can read to get extra points for your realm. Obviously, again, you do not have to read these, but if you want to score some extra points, then these are some books that you can read if you are on Team Serene. Or if you're even not participating in Realmathon and you just want some whimsical fantasy reads, these are some of my favorites. So I have broken this video down into middle grade and then YA/adult. And at the end, I am going to just share some whimsical fantasy books that I have not read, that I've heard some really good things, and that I would like to read myself. So the books I'm going to start off with are all books that I myself have read. The first one is the Polar Bears Explorer Club by Alex Bell. Obviously, I don't have my books with me, so I'm going to have to put pictures in here. It's just not going to be fun for editing Rai. But this one is a adventure middle grade story about a society where there's all these different adventure guilds, and the one that we're focusing on in this book is the Polar Bears Explorer Club. Our main character lives with her father, who found her as an ice orphan, I think it is the phrasing, and he has taken her in and has raised her. And in the last minute, he takes her on his adventure as being a member of the Polar Bear Explorer Club, which is not traditional in the society because females are not usually ones that are part of the Explorers Club. We have a great ragtag group of friends that she meets and explore and get lost in adventures while exploring the Arctic tundra. I read this for the most recent round of Polarathon and I'm really glad I did, and I'll be continuing this series for Aromathon. There is such whimsical characters. We have like talking animals and it literally melted my heart and I absolutely loved it and I cannot wait to continue this series. The next one is Frostheart, and this is by Jamie Littler, another polar fantasy that I recently read for Polarathon that again is hosted by Jade from Jade Reads. This is about a young boy who has a special talent, and for this talent he is not very well received by the village that he lives with, so it really ostracizes him. So he has been taken in by someone to raise him and he's not very happy and he really wants to find out what has happened to his parents. So a ship comes in, the Frostheart, and he decides to go with them and take on this magical journey. There's lots of talking animals. The leader or the captain of the Frostheart is a talking female walrus and I love her. She's such a badass character and the images and the graphics in this story are so amazing. This is a series, and if you're looking for a fun, whimsical, a quick read, again, an adventure story, I would highly recommend Frostheart. The next one is Rainbow Gray. I can't think of the author's name, but I will put it here. The sequel just came out not that long ago. I have hauled it in my last video because the sprayed edges were absolutely immaculate. loved it. This is a fantastical story that talks about like weather magic, and our main character thinks that they don't have any magical powers, and so they're living in a society where everyone else has magical powers. And yeah, it's just really very whimsical, the writing itself. Our main character has a pet that is a cloud kitty. I mean, how much more whimsical can you get than that? Also, if you didn't know, Gavin from How to Train Your Gavin has a little cameo in this book as well that is a character inspired by him, so definitely go check this one out. And the audiobook for this one is really fun too. However, you do miss out on the amazing graphics and the images that have been included in the book, which I'm really sad that I missed out on the first time I read it, but I would like to do a reread of the first one before I read the second one so I can experience all the beautiful images that are put throughout this book. The next one is one that I talk about on my channel quite a bit, and I'm just going to recommend the whole series even though I've only read the first 2 books, but I will hopefully be continuing and finishing the series next month. And this is Pages and Co. This is the ideal whimsical middle grade story. This is about our main character, Tilly, who lives in a bookstore with her grandparents. And then one day she is able to realizes that her family and her are able to book wander, and they go into their favorite stories like Anne of Green Gables. Also, the characters can come out and she's visited by people such as Anne, and I just love this story. There's also a little bit of mystery because her mother has been missing for some years, and she's trying to investigate what happened with her mother and if it has to do with anything with this like book wandering society that she is now kind of learning about. Each of these stories focuses on different stories and fairy tales, and if you are a reader lover, which probably are if you're watching this video, everyone's dream is to be able to meet their favorite characters, and Tilly in the Book Wanderers is able to do that. So I mean, how much more perfect is that for a reader? The next one needs no introduction. I feel like everyone knows about this one, but is definitely the epitome of whimsical, and this is Amari and the Night Brothers. This story was one of my favorite books of all time, and I cannot wait for the sequel to come in. We have Amari, who lives in kind of a poor end of town but goes to a private school where she is the minority, and she experiences some racism and discrimination in her school. Then when her brother goes missing, people are just saying that he is gone missing. He has joined the wrong group of friends because they just assume, since he is from a different part of town than a lot of the other students at the school. However, she starts to learn that maybe there might be more to her brother's disappearance, and she wants to investigate it. Through her investigations, she finds out that there is all these magical world creatures living among them, and that was like my dream when I was a kid. I always was like, I wonder if there's like magical creatures living next door and you just don't know because they're like disguised as humans. Well, this is literally my childhood fantasy coming to life, and the found family in this book is really, really amazing. We have a attendance at a school, a competition, so a lot of buzzwords, and definitely whimsical fantasy. So I mean, if you've not read Amari and the Night Brothers and you are on Team Serene or just in general, I would pick this book up. The next 2 are by the same author. So the first one is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. I really like this story. It's about a young boy who something tragic happened to his parents, and he was left alone as a baby outside a graveyard, and a family of ghosts had found him and took him into the graveyard. And so he is raised by a family in a community of ghosts. However, as he grows up, he's starting to feel this real pull where he loves his family and he wants to remain a part of this ghost community in the graveyard. He also is human, and he feels this pull to want to get to know more about being a human in society, and he is kind of conflicted because he wants to maybe venture out of the graveyard. However, there is a bad guy that's coming after him as well that has some association perhaps with his parents' death. So this story is a lot about growing up as well as that whimsical fantasy. We literally have a family of ghosts raising a human. I really liked this story. It's been a little bit while since I've read it, so I would like to do a reread of this soon. But if you're looking for a whimsical fantasy that it's a little bit darker, I would suggest this one. And going on with this idea of whimsical fantasy but has a darker twist, I would recommend Coraline by Neil Gaiman. This story is literally so creepy about a little girl who has moved into a new flat, and she is feeling really out of place. Her parents don't give her a lot of attention. Everyone keeps calling her Caroline instead of Coraline, and she's just not very happy with how her life is going. One day she finds this magical door, and she wanders in and she finds her other mother and her other father, and it is an alternate world with the same people that are in her real world, but things are very different there and very twisted. And I have now read this as enjoyment, but I also teach this book with my resource kids and like this as much as I do. You guys probably have heard the movie about this one as well, so there is a movie adaptation of this. There is a talking cat, which I mean, who does not like talking animal companions, which is one of the prompts for Brummathon, so that could definitely give Team Serene some extra points. And it is very dark and twisted, especially for a middle grade, and there are some really creepy pictures and images scattered throughout. So I mean, if you're again looking for a darker whimsical book, I would suggest those last two books I just said. Okay, so now we're gonna go into my YA and middle grade recommendations, and we're gonna start off with a graphic novel, and it's called The Girl from the Sea. And I feel terrible that I'm not saying all the authors, but it's hard when I don't have the books in front of me. I recently read this book, and the graphics in this book are absolutely gorgeous. They're so colorful. We have little baby seals in this, and I just absolutely love it. This is like about a coming of age story. It's also queer, which I mean, bonus points right there in my book. We have a girl who is trying to navigate a life, and then this new girl shows up at school, and she's starting to have feelings for her, but there is some more to this girl than meets the eye, and that's where that magical, whimsical side comes in. I would highly recommend this book. It is a great quick read, so I know if you're thinking about wanting some quick books for the Peace Talk weekends where you get double points, I would highly recommend this one because you get double points and it is whimsical, so you can keep building up on those points. So if you're looking for a queer, whimsical graphic novel, I would highly suggest this one. The next one needs no introduction again, and this is the Wayward Children series. This is the epitome of whimsical fantasy in my eyes. I absolutely love this series. Right now there are 7 of them out. They're super quick reads. Portal fantasy, which I really want to read more of because every portal fantasy book that I read I absolutely love. So this is about a school for the wayward children. So these are children that were living in society who really were maybe struggling, didn't feel like they fit in their current life, and all of a sudden a door appears for them, and they have the choice to either stay where they are living currently or to walk through that door. And that door is a magical area, society, town. It's different for every single person that finds the door because that new land that they go in is they were missing in their real world. We have candy corn farmers in some books. We have some books that are super, super, super dark, and there's lots of queer rap in all of these books. I definitely will say that because there are so many books, definitely some books are more favored by other people. It's all kind of what you are looking for. These I will be rereading this month because I will be reading these for the Peace Talk weekends. These are really quick audiobooks as well, so even if you don't have the physical copy, a lot of times they have them on Hoopla and things like that in your library. Check out because they are really quick audiobooks to listen to. The next one is another graphic novel, and this is Mooncakes, and this is another, I believe this is queer if I recall, and it is literally just following the life pretty much of a witch and some werewolves. And I don't really want to say too much about it, especially when I'm talking about graphic novels, because they are super short, and Mooncakes is a very short graphic novel that I feel like if I say too much then I would be spoiling a lot of the book. But this is a super queer book about witches and werewolves and fantastical creatures, so I mean, I feel like that's a lot of buzzwords for a lot of people, so I mean, if those work for you, I would definitely pick this book up. The next 2 books are by the same author, and the first one is Lost in the Neverwoods by Aiden Thomas. I love Aiden Thomas. They are one of my favorite authors, and this is a Peter Pan retelling. This was an easy 5-star read for me. We've gotten into Peter Pan retelling, which is really funny because Peter Pan, like the Disney movie, is not one of my favorites, so it's kind of ironic that I really like retellings of it. But we have our main character Wendy, who has had these dreams and of someone guy named Peter, but she thinks that this is dreams that she had, not real, but come to find out there is a little bit more real to these memories that she has of this guy named Peter. So it is a little bit of a mystery as well because we have kids that are going missing from their town that she's living in. There is a little bit of a portal fantasy aspect of this book too, and the cover itself is just absolutely gorgeous, and I really, really adored this book. And the next one is The Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. So I really liked this one as well. I think I gave this one 4.5, and I gave Lost in the Neverwoods a 5-star read. This is super queer as well. We have our main character who is supposed to be performing like a ritual when he reaches a certain age, and it's something to do with like their magic, and he is transgender, so his family wants him to complete the female ceremony, but obviously he is not female and he wants to complete the male ceremony, but his family does not want that, so he wants to prove his family wrong that he can complete and be successful with the male ceremony. And when he does it in secrecy with his friends. He brings back the bad boy from his high school that has recently passed away. And so now he has this ghost that's tagging along with him, and they're also trying to figure out what has happened to his friend, as well as some other string of recent murders that have been going on. So again, super queer, magical, mystery. I mean, those are all super buzzwords to me. So I mean, yeah. And the next one is Once and Future Witches by Alex Harrow. This is an adult whimsical fantasy book that I would like to recommend to you. Anything really by Alex Harrow is definitely a whimsical fantasy, but in the end, Once and Future Witches is a powerful feminist telling of a witchy story about a town that is not Salem, but it comes after Salem, and they know, like, they reference Salem as stuff that has happened, and things are kind of repeating in this society. The writing is very whimsical and very flowery. I don't know, that's not the word that I'm looking for, but I would be cautious going into these books because a lot of these books that I've been recommending have whimsical qualities, but necessarily maybe not. Writing is whimsical but not very extreme, but I feel like when you get more into the adult whimsical fantasy, it does produce a different type of writing style, which I do like, so I'm okay with it, but I know a lot of people don't care for that, but so just as a heads up. And the next one I'd like to recommend to you is The Midnight Library, and this is the last one, and this is an adult whimsical fantasy. Forewarning, you need to go into this book with a good mental health situation going on for you because it is very dark. We have our main character who has contemplated committing suicide, and she has gone down to this magical like library where she is seeing how other ways her life would have ended if she had taken different routes. I'm explaining this really, really bad, but it's like going into the library and she opens up these books and it's different tellings of her life if she had made different decisions. It's really good. I really like this story, but you definitely have to be in a good mental state because there's so many trigger warnings for depression, suicide, and all of that stuff. So these are books that I have read and would recommend to you that are considered whimsical fantasy. Some whimsical fantasy books that I'm going to try and get to over the next month is The Night Circus, The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. Those both are by Erin Morgenstern. Gallant, I really, really, really want to get to Gallant by V.E. Schwab. Maddie LaRue is obviously a very whimsical fantasy as well. I would like to get to that one, but it is a chunk of a book, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to it in the month of April. Strange the Dreamer, anything really by Laini Taylor is also very whimsical. So yeah, I mean, whimsical fantasy is very a broad genre, but it really is kind of that light fantasy that does not go into that high fantasy, epic fantasy. It's right kind of before that. I really correlate a lot of middle grades with a whimsical fantasy, but there are definitely a lot of middle grade and YA fantasy choices as well. So if you have read any of these books, let me know in the comments below. If you have a favorite whimsical fantasy book that I have not talked about, I would love to hear about them in the comments and talk to you about them and add more to my TBR that's ever growing. So if you want to take this crazy journey with me, please make sure you press the subscribe button. If you're my friend on any of my other social media platforms, I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. All the information is linked down below. So stay kind, loves, and I'll see you next time. Bye!